Everyone. Hopefully you had a pleasant evening after the what I thought was a reasonably good dinner last night. Thank you for being here so early again in the morning after a full day intensive activity that we had yesterday. Quite a great activity. So this morning what I'd like to do is introduce the Associate Vice Provost for Research for the University of Washington, Dr. Jeffrey Cheeks. And Jeff's responsibility is much of the National Science, well, not only the National Science Foundation, but all of the research with regard to the research office. And he'll give us some insights about the profile for research for the University of Washington.
Thank you, Tim. And I must say, so please, for those of you online and also here, I'm assuming that you can hear me okay?
Yes.
All right. And so when Tim first contacted me about giving the opening remarks for today's session, I thought that he was asking about 10 to 15 minutes to give an overview of the research enterprise. And then when I saw that he had scheduled me for 30 minutes, my first impression was, Tim, you've obviously never heard me talk before. And why you want to subject your audience to 30 minutes of me is a bit beyond me. But I promise that we will not follow the second rule of thermodynamics. I will not expand to fill the space. I instead will give you the gift of time. So I do want to extend a broad welcome to all of you, particularly to the collaborators from the University of Illinois at Urbana-Champaign, the prime awardees, as well as those of you from Arizona State, University of California, San Diego, Oak Ridge National Laboratory, as well as U.S. Geological Survey and the officers at NSF. So everybody welcome. And unfortunately, one of our faculty here, Cliff Mass, a meteorologist, had noted that for those of you visiting from out of town, if you're wondering, well, you thought September is a great time to be in Seattle, it usually is. Now, here's the scary part. Cliff noted that we had the best summer that we've had in 2 generations. Now, to people from the outside like me, I'm originally from North Carolina and also was previously at Boulder before I came to the University of Washington. So I went from 300 days of sunshine to 250 days of rain. But the fact that, this won't happen again for 40 to 50 years is a bit daunting. But just to give you a perspective, there are many of the natives here that are looking at this weather outside and saying, finally, it's getting back to normal around here. So it's all a matter of perspective. So let me try to give you an idea of who it is you're being subjected to and why did Tim approach me about trying to make the opening remarks. First of all, what is my job? And by the way, my last name is Cheek. I'm just half a posterior, not a full one. So it's singular. So there's a lot of us in North Carolina. So whenever my brother and I would show up somewhere, we would hear the whole story about, now we've got a full one. So anyway, it's just, that's why I thought I'd at least let you know, no, it's just singular. But what is my job? I report to Mary Lidstrom. She is the Vice Provost for Research. She's our Chief Research Officer at the University of Washington. And basically what I do is anything that Mary doesn't want to do. So mainly that involves that the units that report up to me are our Office of Sponsored Programs and our Human Subjects Division, as well as oversight for export controls and the Classified Security Program here at the University of Washington. But you also have to keep in mind that's the job that you're listed as doing, but what's the perspective of your stakeholders? How do they see it? And so those of you not familiar with the campus, I am based right next door in Gerberding Hall, this strange looking gray building with all of the gargoyles and unusual architecture. The faculty refer to it as the black hole on campus. And what's even more interesting is how the students perceive Gerberding Hall, because now there actually is an office and their student life finally moved in there several years ago. But prior to that, it was the Attorney General's office, so it was nothing but university administration. And the reason I want to share this with you is that I found out how the students view it in a very painful way, because I moved my daughter. My wife and I just have the one daughter, and I moved her here right before she started high school. So I was obviously not a popular figure in the house at that time. And we also, a few months after that, we had friends from California visiting. Their oldest child was considering enrolling at the University of Washington. And so they were here on a campus tour, which is led by our students. And so my daughter went along with this tour. And so she's already not too fond of me for relocating her right before high school, but the student guide gets right out in front of Gerberding Hall and says, okay, this is the most boring building on campus. Nothing ever happens here, and as a student, the only reason you will ever be involved with this building is if you violate the student code of conduct. By the time I got home, and my daughter was like, so Dad, the most boring building on campus. So, but, okay, why do I do what I do? And actually, I very much enjoy my job because we see ourselves in the Office of Research, we're an academic support unit. And the best analogy I can prescribe is that, again, being originally from North Carolina, I am a rabid college basketball fan. And I would say that serving in academic administration is a lot like being the referee at a basketball game. So if you do your job well, no one even knows you're there. But you contribute to something that thousands or perhaps millions of people enjoy. But when you screw up, you're going to have thousands of people screaming at you, and that's just the way that it is. But okay, so why do that? And that's why I'd like to give you a sense of perspective of why do I enjoy my job behind the scenes? What is it down here that I'm working to support? And that's what I'd like to give you an overview about. So mostly, when I look at, and again, this is taking much of this data is from our annual report, which is published online. But the performance rankings for the University of Washington are exemplary, and we've established our reputation as a premier university. One of the most influential international ranking reports of the world, published by the Institute of Higher Education at China's Shanghai-Jiang University, we placed the University of Washington 16th among the world's top universities. This is a ranking we've held since 2007, and 14th nationally within the U.S. And since 1974, the university has been among the top 5 public and private universities nationally to receive federal research and training funds, and we're now ranked number 1 amongst public universities in the receipt of federal funds for science and engineering. Research funding at the University of Washington has doubled twice in the past 20 years. And so what's the source of all of this? Well, for fiscal year 2012, UW faculty received $1.47 billion in sponsored awards, which includes $107 million from the National Science Foundation. What's also interesting is that over the last 5 years, as funding is not only due to sequestration, but other factors that have reduced the amount of funds available for research, our federal market share is increasing. That's directly attributable to our strong faculty, who are also highly collaborative. And they have the breadth and the depth to do well in a tight funding climate. At the same time frame, the number of large awards that our faculty have received, those greater than $1 million, have also increased. So the type of big science that you are convening here to discuss and the large interregional, interdisciplinary collaboration you have going here is exactly what we're seeking to support here at the University of Washington. And even with the impact of the federal sequestration, which I understand was one of the key reasons that the meeting was moved here to Washington. And by the way, we are used to hosting meetings here in Seattle in September, August and September. In my line of work, given who I have to deal with, and often that, for example, the NSF OIG or FDA auditors, et cetera, all the folks in D.C. really want to be here in August and September. They mutter some nonsense about, well, it's the close of the fiscal year, so we have to spend our funds. I understand. I'm from the East Coast. I know why you want to get out of D.C. in August and September. It's okay. But why don't you ever show up here in February? But anyway, so what is it that we in administration need to do to encourage the type of work that you want to do here? And Mary Liz, from my boss, has made it clear that where the Office of Research will put its efforts is that we primarily want to focus on what is it we can do to lower the administrative burden so that that helps with recruiting and retention of the top faculty. We also want to make strategic investments in key research facilities and similarly targeted investment in infrastructure so that we can continue to hold and increase our market share. One of the goals in the Office of Research is to continue to facilitate strengthening the university's competitiveness in research, which includes enhancing our ability to obtain and manage large collaborative projects such as the one for which you have convened for this meeting. And Tim did give me a bit of a background on this is your 3rd annual meeting and what's the overall goals of the project. I understand the purpose is to develop a broad and deep understanding about how to better integrate cyber-structure-enabled software that addresses complex problems that incorporate space and time. To accomplish this, you've got basically 2 overarching aims: CyberGIS and supportive science, and the science of CyberGIS in and of itself. The first aim requires that you collaborate with your partners in environmental research, hazard prediction and response, socioeconomic and health research. To accomplish the second aim, the project focuses on computing and the science of integration, which I understand is a term that's coined by one of your keynote speakers, Dr. Mike Goodchild of UC Santa Barbara. It's readily apparent that what you're doing is at that critical interface between applying fundamental research knowledge to solve complex and very real-world problems. And I'd like to relay one in particular that it's just how these things work out. And again, when Tim first approached me, none of us had any idea of what would be happening, but want to let you know that last week my wife underwent hip replacement surgery, and so I spent last week being the nurse at home, but we had a friend that flew in from Boulder that is now taking care of her so that I could make an appearance here and also get back to being in my office there. But the reason I bring that up is that those of you have been paying attention to the news know about the disaster unfolding in Boulder and Larimer County in Colorado, particularly with all the flooding. Our former house, the basement had flooded, and our friend that's here, she had helped her husband pump out their basement, and then she got on a plane and came here. So the point I bring it up, though, is that as of now, there's still 800 people unaccounted for. And so when I think about the challenges that they are running into, what infrastructure is needed so they can better predict when these disasters happen, where are going to be the most vulnerable points? What communication infrastructure needs to be in place so that you get the data you need to see how extensive is the hazard and what kind of response is needed? And so I understand disaster response is just one aspect of what you apply your work to, but it is one that has particularly hit home with me. And that's why, again, I want to reinforce that I enjoy the work that I do, but the work of people like me is to support people like you, because you're the ones on the front line doing all the heavy lifting and really pushing the envelope of what it is that we're able to do with this technology. So I'll be glad to answer any questions you might have about the University of Washington, but mostly I just wanted to extend a welcome from the university and a reaffirmation that seeing the results of your work is what, at the end of my day, makes me feel good about what I do. So thank